The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on teleSUR. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome to Cultura Latina. Today we're visiting a national landmark castle in Mexico City, and also a look into the outstanding wax museum that worked as a historic reservoir in the city of Quito. Come see. Hidden in the heart of the Mexican capital is the Chapultepec Theater, a place filled with incredible architecture and diverse paintings. Come see.
I'm Salvador Ruedas Smithers. I am currently the director of the National Museum of History, and I was born in Mexico City.
My name is Daphne Puente Hernandez. I come from Reynosa, Tamaulipas, and I came to spend a week's holiday here in Mexico City.
My name is Sofia Morales. I'm from Reynosa, Tamaulipas. I'm visiting the city, and Chapultepec Castle has always been one of my favorite places.
The construction of this building began in the last third of the 18th century. Its purpose was to be a holiday residence of the viceroys. Matías de Galvez began the project, and it was continued by his son, Bernardo de Galvez, but it was left abandoned by the end of the 18th century. At the beginning of 1830, and with the independent republic, it was decided to be established as a military base. In 1939, President Lázaro Cárdenas decided to open the castle of Chapultepec to the Mexican people and establish here the National History Museum, which is the place of Mexico's memory defined by objects.
It is a symbol for us Mexicans. I was saying to my friends that I would not blame anyone from wanting to live in a place like this. It is a wonderful site. It has beautiful architecture. It is a jewel of our heritage.
Well, I came here to see our history, the history of our country, which is an impressive history that makes me very proud to be Mexican.
At the inauguration of the museum, the speech of the director of the time was about establishing the Chapultepec Castle as a place where the life of a Mexican could be fully developed, from children learning through history, but above all, having access to art and entertainment.
Many of us have only experienced it through books or videos, so coming to visit in person allows us to get closer to the history. It brings what we learned in school to life.
I love history. It was one of my favourite subjects in school. I like to know a lot about everything, our ancestors, how things emerged, the moments in our history where you can see we moved forward, where we became free.
Yes, the idea was to make a living museum. The director at that time said that it was not about leaving the Chapultepec Castle, the tomb of history, but rather the opposite, to make it come alive, that it constantly changes and grows, that there be moments of creativity that are open to the public of all levels, but above all to those that don't have access to the more enclosed or elitist places.
One famous quote says that, "Only when you know where you came from will you know where you're going." So you have to be aware of your origins and value your story. What makes a people great? Their history.
Without historical memory, it is impossible to know what collectivity you belong to, but it is also impossible that you form a concept of yourself as an individual. Historical memory is a wonderful instrument, and sometimes false too, because it can be wrong on dates and values, but without it, it would be impossible to live. Some can be wrong on dates and values, but without it, it would be impossible to live. Some historian once said that we don't know the purpose of history, but we also don't know the purpose of art, and yet we couldn't live without it. The same applies to memory.
One of the lessons that Mexico's history teaches us is the need to struggle for what we want. That despite the circumstances and the problems that we face, we can overcome challenges. We were able to free ourselves from Spanish domination with very little, and the majority of the soldiers were not soldiers but indigenous people who fought to achieve their goal.
After 70 years since the museum opened, there are some people, when you say, let's go to the National Museum of History, they have no idea that you are saying, let's go to Chapultepec Castle. However, when you say, let's go to Chapultepec Castle, they always come to look for the Niños Héroes, Carlota, Porfirio Díaz, the heroes of the revolution. They know that in this place are the ghostly voices of the men and women who in one way or another are responsible for building Mexico.
Next to the Presidential Palace in Quito lies the Alberto Mena Camaño Wax Museum, a place to be in touch with Ecuador's remarkable history. Join us.
Located in the Metropolitan Cultural Center of Quito is the Alberto Mena Camaño Museum. Named after the businessman and former city council member, Camaño donated his extensive collection of colonial and Republican period artwork to the city, and the museum was named in his honor and opened in 1959 to the public. Located next to the Carondelet Presidential Palace, the building in which the museum is housed has a story to tell.
Es un edificio de más de 400 años de historia.
It's a building that it's over 400 years old, and it is really very exciting to walk these hallways, because it was first a canyon that was here, and then this land became the Jesuits. The church began building here in 1605, because we should remember that this was a place that can be understood in parts. After they were expelled, this became part of the municipality. This was where the highest school of the Jesuits was, and it became the seminary of San Luis. Here was the currency house, the University of San Gregorio Mano. After the expulsion of the Jesuits, it became the University of Santo Tomás de Quito, the Central University of Quito, and after the Central University of Ecuador. The arrival of the geodesic mission that was here in 1736, the tobacco factory, here the Mejia High School was then municipal buildings. These are the tidbits I can tell you about of the 400 years of history of this building, and it is here obviously where the Republic was formed, the first public library, which was one of the most important and recognized in South America.
While holding pieces from Camaño's collection, the museum is most well known by the public for its collection of over 30 wax figures, which allows visitors to fully experience the history of Quito and Ecuador. The majority of the wax figures are ensembled within the Metropolitan Cultural Center by in-house technicians, who undertake the extensive process of creating lifelike models to present the historical events defining Ecuador's distinct periods.
En 1970,
Scene of wax figures was added to the museum's collection in 1970, which showed the 1810 massacre, which occurred here on this site. The Patriots had declared independence the year before, which was considered a crime, but within 3 months, Spanish authorities had taken control. The Patriots were imprisoned here and were brutally assassinated on August 2, so this scene shows this event in wax. Since this scene was installed, people began calling this the Wax Museum, a name that has stuck. The display, called From Quito to Ecuador, is made from wax. It presents various scenes in wax which show how we went from being a colony based mainly in Quito to the Republic of Ecuador we are today.
The museum works to accommodate children and adults alike through inclusive tour guides who present information in a dynamic way, allowing for visitors to take in and interact with the pieces.
Our principal objective is to reach citizens with these displays that we can understand more of our heritage, our identity, and our history.
Free of charge and attracting some 60,000 visitors per year, the Camaño Museum is one of the most popular in the country, bringing national and international visitors closer to Ecuador's history.
Thanks for watching. Next week we'll be back with another taste in Latin American culture. See you then.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with Atomun. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identities on By Gender. Cultural manifestations, the art in all its forms and the stories of real lives. Every day we feature a wide variety of content, only on teleSUR, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean. Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR. teleSUR brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Friday, only on teleSUR.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. teleSUR documentaries. Sundays, only on teleSUR.
The spirituality of a person is a state of connection, of experience with something greater than ourselves. But God, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, Garu, Jave, is a nature in the deepest part of our being. Many have decided to follow a religion that allows them to get the divine character that mark their life and developing in society. Others prefer to stay away from the beliefs of a supreme being. However, in some countries, having a different belief that is established in the law is motive for persecution, harassment, and even hostility, which can lead to a person to force them to move to other places. In other cases, the promulgation of a faith that can lead them to death.
Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and different religions' creeds have been persecuted throughout history by different groups. All this in a moment that the religious persecution, one of the most important reasons why people have to flee their countries, their homes. According to the Dutch Foundation, Open Door, more than 3,000 Christians were killed by the creed during the year 2017.
Every human being has the right to choose free their religion, of not believing or validating the existence of a supreme being, and exercising such belief publicly without being victim of oppression, discrimination, or attempted change by force. However, there are some countries where religious freedom is limited. Even in some cases, devotees of other beliefs not established in the law that govern them are accused of blasphemy and condemned even with the maximum death penalty. The most persecuted religion in the world are the Christians, who is the first place. Islam is followed, and the hatred for Jewish religion has recently grown in some parts of the world. According to the delegation of the Israeli Association, Argentina is a South American country with a total of 404 complaints of the anti-Semitic act. Among the countries that where the majority of the population is Muslim, Pakistan has the strictest laws in the world. According to the penal code of that country, those who proclaim another faith or urge to people to join their religion circle can face even death sentences or life imprisonment.
Look, Pakistan is ours. We were born there. We were raised there. We don't have any problem there, but the only tension that we have is the blasphemy law. It is imposed to Christians.
To live in Pakistan, to us is very hard. We don't leave our home, and if we do it very carefully, and to live there for us is very hard, very hard.
Nigeria is another of the nations where the harassment of Christians and the target users is constant. The situation has left a large avalanche of dead believers.
I believe that President Muhammadu Buhari can bring these killings to an end. I believe that if he rises up, these people will stop. Who are these people? Can they face Buhari? They can't. Buhari should just stand up and speak to them. We don't carry arms. We will not carry arms. We don't teach carrying arms. But we can call on God. Our God is bigger than human ammunition.
So I've always prayed that God in his infinite power will be able to stop this unwanted killing that's been going on in Nigeria, be it as a result of religious, communal, political, ritual, whatsoever kind of killing. We are not supposed to take the life of another person.
Generally, to me, I feel killing my brother or my sister is wrong. God Almighty that has created us loves us. And I'm not sure that God wants us to die. That was why in the first case, he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to come and die for us. He loves us so much. So God is saying that we should love ourselves. If there's love in me, I am saying I should love you. If I love you, I won't kill you.
Wars have also left painful scars on many believers, who have seen their temples plummet as a result of their bombing.
We had a church in Raju and another in Yondirs. But due to the bombardment of Raju, our church was destroyed there. People were forced to go out to Afrin because of the bombardment that also destroyed their homes. We have supported all civilians coming from Raju and Yondirs and other areas. We opened the door of the church and we received families here.
The Article 80 on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948 states that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes the freedom to change of religion or belief, as well as the freedom to manifest their religion or beliefs individually or collectively, both in public and private, by teaching, practice, worship, and observance. However, the religious intrigue goes in crescendo over the years. People in the Rohingyas, who are mostly Muslims, also suffer for as a contempt and attack of Buddhists in Myanmar.
About 8 years ago, there was a lot of tension between the Buddhists and the Rohingya in Rakhine. After that, our lives became very difficult. I don't want to go back to Myanmar. How do I get back to that country again? We've suffered a lot there.
In 2017, about 10,000 Rohingyas by Myanmar army were assassinated, according to United Nations figures. Those who were forced to flee nearby states, such as Bangladesh. Islam practitioners sympathize with the Rohingyas and express their reaction to the genocide and the precious treatment given to their brothers in their faith.
I came here because of our faith and our belief, and to support our brothers in Myanmar, a faith, a belief. When we were abused, we also feel abused, because we are not so different. We are the same, a religion, another faith.
Today, religion has been fully involved in the debate over Europe's migratory crisis. The media coverage of the refugee crisis focused mostly on the large increase of the number of Muslim people who were staying on the European soil. The stigmatization of refugees arriving in Europe and a strong message of the hatred given by some leaders of the European bloc and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, argues a strong xenophobia and rejection of the believers of Islam. And this has been used undermining closely after all the borders in the world.
For example, blaming an entire community for something that has been perpetrated by one person. You know, we've seen this over and over again. This is very dangerous because asylum seekers and refugees, in their overwhelming majority, do not commit crimes and are particularly vulnerable to discrimination. We've seen also episodes of violence in many countries and to abuse. I urge governments of countries where this thing may happen or are reported that to handle with great caution these issues, because they may expose vulnerable communities to grave retaliation.
Religion is often manipulated and misused by sectors with vested interests that fuel hostilities and hatred among the people of different faiths for their own benefit. Despite this, many countries today where intolerance seems to win the battle of freedom of thought, different religions coexist and give an example of coexisting and mutual respect among the like.
There is no concept of Hindu and Muslim enmity. We are living here as a brotherhood. There is no any caste, any religious. We all are brothers and living peacefully, living in this city, in this district.
Here is a Hindu-Muslim brotherhood, love and understanding among us that has continued for many years and is consistent and has not been broken at all. If we have any minor problems, we all solve them together. In Diwali, we send them gifts, and in Eid, they send us candy. Islam does not have that narrow mentality that teaches hatred of non-Muslim. Islam wants a peaceful society. We don't hate anyone, nor do others hate us.
In a multicultural world where freedom of expression oneself into many steps that it believes without anyone imposing is a refutable right that no one should prevent, much less be the casualty of evictions, sufferings, and forced displacement.
The Rohingyas are a minority in Myanmar. During these last years, they have suffered strong persecutions and even genocide coming from the Buddhist authorities in this country. Many of them, most of them, have had to forcibly migrate to close countries such as Bangladesh, and where in these moments they are living in stateless conditions. According to the United Nations, the Rohingyas are the ethnic minority that has changed the most in the whole world in the last years. Such is the case that repression on the borders produced by the part of the government in Myanmar has caused almost 10,000 Rohingyas were murdered in just 2017.
What do you think about religion persecution?
Something is done wrong because I don't believe that in any religion says that we should persecute our brothers.
I think that more than anything lately, we have always had the idea that it's terrorism or aggression in some way, and that in the end, it transmits to hold the world in a very wrong way and a very sad way as well. I think people have an idea what a religion is, let's say because a religion defines what is peace and coexisting in a very quiet harmony, and that doesn't happen right now.
In the religious persecution today arise from extremist groups that are called conservative of religious, as Muslim or Christian, but who are not really. Because we who are practitioners, we know that religions advocate for peace and for coexisting, and anyone who says otherwise is not really following the messages of peace.
Obviously, they are, for example, extremists. They have a lack of education that perhaps in the least developed countries, they have the difficulty to study or to understand that people are different to them, or they don't have the minimum that is to read or to actually understand other people's beliefs. Then let's say those texts are reading the language, as for example the Arab, they will not come to understand if they only might hear what the people say and think. So they know that it's only generated or that it's only written, and that is a whole relation, and that is a whole religion for them. So they have to respect them.
Of course, because only the Quran are in Arabic, so if you don't know Arabic, you can misunderstand the message by terror root, and the person who have no student can follow that idea.
Exactly. Many think it's also because everything is written in a totally context, totally different than the ones from today. Then, for example, I take a verse from the Quran and I interpret it as I want to, for example, that I have to kill, you can't. You literally can't. You have to look the sort of the content that it was reading that verse, and we have to move it to this day. And I think that's very important, and that was very different.
To base interpret the facts with historical context with which it is written, because the society it is not the same now that when they broke the sacred text. Then it is necessary to interpret them and to know that today there is a completely different society that we move in to our time and to our thinking now.
I think everything is based in respect to that a person can confess his faith or belief as it is, without harming others, and that she or he does not harm him. Then, if I respect your belief, you gotta respect mine. If I respect that you go to the mass, I got to respect that you go to the mosque. Then it's based on that in respect.
Those of us who really practice and build on our religion understand that everything is based on respect, and we have to shake hands with our brother and believe in Allah or believe in God.
Exactly. That in the end, it is the same for both religions. That you have to believe in God. We believe in one God. In the end, everything is based on God.
We, in the end, Muslims and Christians believe in the same God, merciful and forgiving as the Quran and the Bible define. But we run and get into our hands that are more different than the similarities we have in common. And since we know each other, we have been understanding little by little than the stereotype we had in the head were very naturalized because we really had many years thinking this, but that's what from reality.
As a child, you're raised, for example, at home. We wear this as a Muslim, they're not common here. It could take you to the evil path of the evil. But let him discovering him to know how much evil a Christian is, it's amazing.
I believe that the media and there have a lot to do because we are always giving the most extreme image of religion. But do we really know what the Islam religion of the Christian religion is? We always stay with what you watch on TV, with extreme groups that say things that are far from the sacred text and far from day to day how we live religion, how we live your faith and how I live mine. I believe that in the end it is education and to promote that it is difference of that is the end the same unit us. We are human beings and we have to respect and we have to do love.
Ideology believes everything. I don't know, it's part of an angle, but it's very internalized. I think in the end, we are only afraid to show what we truly are, for fear the reaction of another person's. We really wouldn't have to be afraid like that.
For example, what stereotype did you have of a Christian before we met?
I used to have many Christian friends before I met you, honestly, but they always talk about religion when Easter only came. Throughout the year, they did not speak about everything. Until Easter, they came and talked what they do, and what they believe in, how they profess that faith. But it seemed actually strange to me, because it's like, are you a Christian or not? And the other days of the year, aren't you a Christian or what? Do you practice or not? And by knowing you, I was really very curious, because you do have a very present of that being a Christian, I practicing that, maybe you don't go over something, but you talk to me a lot about your religion. And you have told me a lot of things that I do not even know. To this day, I have never been told, and it's very interesting to see that for the person that is actually been dealing that as well.
For example, I thought you were very strict about the fact of what's wrong, the fact of reading, I don't feel bad because I said sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Why they do it and I don't? And when I met the community at the end, we have 20 years, sometimes we fail and there are times that we don't, but we always have that desire to continue approaching God, and in the end, we are equal. We are young people who want to to approach God from different confessions, but in the end we have the same desire in the heart. For example, another stereotype I have was the subject of the handkerchief. For me, it was something very distant that I don't understand, and simply the fact of the opportunity to sit with you than just playing.
I think at the end it's all research, you know? To actually get knowledge. Let curiosity lead you to what is different. What someone else is different for you. Then, that's what opens the mind more. What makes you more mature, which makes you more tolerant, in quotes, is more respectful, and you are more respectful as well.
For example, I think that an important point both you who are a marital with children in the mosque and me being catechized to offer children since childhood the opportunity to meet each other, because after all they live in a diverse society and culture, and in the end of school the children are living with Muslim, with Buddhist people, with many religions. Then I believe it is important from our confession to offer them that opportunity to know other religions, to see what they have in common or living together, and in the end understand that what they seek in the peace and consistency, because in the end we are a brother. For example, in the Quran says, right?
In the Quran, we say we have to love our brother. Everything we want for us, I mean, and love your brother. And we want that for yourself and everyone.
And Jesus told of the commandment of love, which if love your brother after your love self, is the same in the end.
Islamophobia is the hostility towards the practitioners of Islam, that is, towards Muslims. All this combined with racism, xenophobia, and in many cases, hatred, which in many cases generates violence. The last report of the Observatory of Islamophobia, that analyzed more than 1,600 articles in media, remarked that at least 60% of these articles had Islamophobic connotations, which generate mainly stereotypes based on this population, which then is possible to generate those hateful messages that are being published in the media and then repeated by the peoples.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, teleSUR, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on teleSUR. Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with Atomun. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identities on By gender, cultural manifestations, the art in all its forms and the stories of real lives. Every day we feature a wide variety of content, only on teleSUR, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean. Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR. teleSUR brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
teleSUR. Weekdays, only on teleSUR.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on teleSUR. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies, through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on teleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your green zone. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on teleSUR.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. teleSUR documentaries. Sundays. Only on teleSUR.
Nice to meet you here from Havana, Dr. Margarita and Tarek. We are very happy to receive you and to talk about this special work that you both do as clowns. But you are also persons who, on their daily life, are not always clown, are not always making laugh. So, to start forward, I would like you to explain me, Tarek, what it gets to be a clown.
What it gets to be a clown?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I will first say that to be a clown, you have to have the talent, you have to have the possibility, you have to have the time, you have to have this patient, you know, that you want to be, and you have to have believing in it. You have to believe that you can really do something good, and you have to change, and you think that you can change. Other than that, you cannot be a clown. This is the main big things. For sure, to be a clown, that needs a lot of study, that means you have to get a lot of trainings, you have to try a lot, to learn a lot, because clown is also making, if you're a clown, that makes you also a better person, that makes you understanding the things different, that makes the connection between you and other people better, or between you and yourself even, because you get to know yourself more. So it's a big thing, and there is a lot of conditions, let's say, if you want to be a clown, but you can be a clown. This is the point.
Traditionally, we conceive clowns as circus clowns, but where is the difference between that clown and the clown that you work with?
I tell you, for me, from my point of view, there is different kind of clowns, for sure, always, all the time. Circus clown, and what Red Noses Palestine or Red Noses Jordan is offering is a different kind of clown. Circus clown is a lot about skills. It's a lot about juggling, fire, jumping, magic, things like this. The clown in the hospital, or the clown who we offer, is a lot about character. It's a lot about building up the character. It's a lot about being aware of where you are and being able to be in this sensitive environment, which is hospitals and other elderly houses or places where you can work. And this is also will kind of like push you as a clown to know more about where you are. So you have to know a little bit about medical, you have to know a little bit of the patients who are there, why they are there, and then it allows you to be part of the healthcare team, which is also a completely different team than the circus team. And this is different, because then it goes into the, I call it theatrical clowning, which is a lot about story, a lot about building up things between you and your partner as clowns. It's a lot about working on a space, getting the connection of the eyes, because on circus you can perform, you know. But there, when you are in the room with one kid or two kids, you have to see the eyes. And the eyes are the connection. You have to read what is happening. You have to see this fear and reduce it. And this is a big difference.
You were talking to me about Red Noses Palestine, because you're Palestine, and because of that, I want you to explain me a little bit about that project, that organization you work with.
That organization, we started as a project, small project, 2010, and I was one of the first clowns there.
Because you've been a clown for 8 years.
2010 as we started, and then 2012 it was registered. We were 1-2 clowns, with one hospital. Today we are in 20 clowns and in 16 hospitals working in different projects and different programs. We work now in the pediatric program, which is for all kinds of pediatrics, you know, in the hospital. We work and we have a program called geriatric, which is geriatric departments in the hospital or elderly houses. But it's very important for us that we don't go to a club like for old people. We go only for old and sick together. So we work with this kind of, or this part of target groups, let's say. We also have something called Circus Smile, which is a different project. It's a very special project that you teach, and it's actually specialized for marginalized areas or for refugees in Palestine. So we go to places where they are, we collect 20 kids, let's say, and we work with them for 4 days in a row. We teach them.
How is that work?
We organize it. We organize it with 2 clowns. They are always there. They work with the kids for 4 days in a row, 3 hours every day. They teach them skills. They teach them skills that they can use, juggling and stuff like this. And the whole idea behind it is the psychosocial support we can do. And the whole idea also behind it is that they know and they discover that they can do things they never expected to do. They will juggle, they just saw it on TV, but they will learn it and they will know and they will have the idea that when you fail, it's a way to be successful. It's a way, it's just a process. And you try, in the end you will do it. And I tell you, with this project I have been doing a long time, after 4 days, the kid is believing in himself more. The kid is doing whatever he wants and he's learning. Then it becomes, and it awakes an interest in the kid. It opens more doors. It helps him as a person, because in the 4th day, he is performing. That's always the program. In the 4th day, he performs as the star of the show for the people he will invite, like his family, his friends, and this is a very special program, and he will perform with the clowns, the real clowns. So he will feel like all the 20 kids, you know, and he will feel that he can stand there in front of people, perform, and be a clown or be someone who can do something really nice. And he will get appreciation, because then everyone will just clap for him. We have also a program called Intensive Smile, which is a very special program also for surgery rooms and departments, where we work with the kid. I will not go deep with it because it's a very deep program, but the whole idea behind it is that the kid, the last thing he sees before the surgery room is clown, and the first thing he sees when he leaves that room back is a clown. So, and in between, the clowns are being more connection, more in that feeling of solidarity with the parents who's waiting for the kid to get out of the room. So he will be waiting there with the family to that kid. We have also a humor and healthcare program where we teach, we give workshops. I don't like to say teach, but we give workshops to doctors and nurses in the hospitals to use some of the things that they can use as doctor and nurses, which is we call, instead of being, because this is the image of the doctors or nurses that they are not, and they can do other things, and they can help with other things. They can introduce themselves in a different way. They can be funny if they want, and this will also break. But this is also what our clowns is, because our clowns are always having white coats as doctors, to build up the bridge of the doctors are not scary. They want to support, they want to help only. Yeah.
You were talking about one of the projects inside Red Nose Palestine, which are intended for refugees. How is that work? The emotional implications it comes with working with the refugees?
Well, as you know, Palestine is under the occupation, and there is so many refugees. I am myself a refugee. I'm from Jerusalem, lives in Bethlehem. We cannot go to Jerusalem. But it's very important to give that opportunities and to bring laughter and support to this refugee camps, let's say we call it. I mean, everything is just mixed there, that everyone is just living with each other. But it's very important to give this opportunity to the kids in the refugee camps to learn new things, to have the idea that in a way you work a lot, you will get a lot. If you do more, if you believe in something, you will get it. And because the opportunities they have is less than the not refugees, you know, let's say, the options they have is also less. So we are trying to offer things also that is different, and it helps them as humans also in their future. If they are not going to be artists, it's not important, but they are more convinced of themselves. They believe in themselves more. So they can really be something. And there's so many good like examples, you know. We have tried.
For example?
Oh, there is a professional juggler now, just because of this 4 days of Circus Smile project. We went there, and there was this kid who was like too much into it. He just discovered it, but he felt that this is his life, this is his thing, you know, and he wanted to do it forever. And when we left, he had to find alternatives, and he was juggling with stones, and he was finding out how can he make juggling balls, and then he did it, and now he is doing juggling with 7 balls, with fire, with this is his work now, this is his. So you open opportunities, you open doors to them during this also. One of the targets of this project, because this project is also having so many beyond than just skills. It's not about skills, it's beyond the skills.
There is a kind of a debate between if clowns are the kind of clowning. There is a debate on the kind of clowning that you do. If it's therapeutic or if it's medical. For you, which one is it?
For me, clown is a clown. For me, he's not a doctor, he's not a therapist, he's not a nurse. For me, a clown is a clown. He's an artist who wants to use the art of clowning to help in that environment, to be part of the healthcare team, but as a clown, not as a doctor, and not mixing the profession things. That's my opinion.
But when you have a doctor, let's say, for example.
If we have a doctor?
If you have a doctor in that team of clowns.
In my team there is no doctors. They are open to come for the auditions, because what we do, how can we get the clowns, how we get them, it's a very long, difficult process. It's not easy. They come for first audition 1 day, shortlisted. We take them to another audition of 4 days, again shortlisted. They go for training 4 days, shortlisted, and then they go for 4 months trainings in the hospital and out of the hospital, watching clowns for a long time without doing clowning, and then we see the visit they do, and then we tell yes or no. And this is a very long and difficult training and auditions, because the quality, for me, the quality of the clowns have to be very high to work in this very sensitive environment. It's not easy, because you can harm as much as you can help. So if you can be that good clown and you can help, so we want you as a good clown and only clown. Because if a clown thinks that he's a doctor, ooh, because you cannot write things, you cannot do surgery, you are a clown. Just be a clown. You are responsible for bringing the joy and laughter. It's easy. But that does not mean that a doctor is not allowed to be a clown. This is also, it's not, there is in art, there is now white and black. And this is very important. It's not like 1 + 1 is 2. I don't see it like this.
I'm very anxious to hear what Margarita has to say about it.
It's just an opinion.
Yes, it's his point of
Yeah,
view.
that's just my opinion. And I say it like this, that a doctor can use, that's what I say, they can use things. But from my point of view, not a clown, because when they are, actually, if they are in the hospital, a doctor who uses beautiful ways to reach and build up a good relationship with the patient, it is amazing. But if it's sometimes clowning and sometimes doctors, I don't know how much is also this relationship will be very clear for the kid or for the family or for the people. It's a very sensitive, it's a line. You have to be very good clown and amazing clown to make this relationship very clear. That's also my opinion, because it's dangerous. And it's dangerous when the clowns are talking as doctors for the parents of the patients, because then they will ask you about medical things. They will ask you about like, hey, my kid today is, I don't know, what should I give him for medicines today? Like, well, I don't know, I'm not doctor, I cannot support in that part. It's very dangerous, because also it's very sensitive that can happen that a doctor in the hospital can ask you for help as a clown. And it's very important that it's very clear, because also hospitals are built on hierarchy, doctors and nurses and this is empowerment. Clown is empowering the kid. For me, tick, tick, tick on the door and giving the chance and the option to the patient to say yes, come in, or no, is empowerment. You are empowering the kid. And while you come in as a clown with a white coat, you build up the bridge between the patient and the doctor. And the doctor is not scary, this is also something important. And being in that part of empowering that kid or that patient in general, because it can be kid, it can be older, is because they are the weakest point in the hospital. Everyone there is controlling them. You sit here, you come here, you make, we want to take this, we take you to the room, we have a surgery. He's controlled completely, he's weak. And there, the clowns have to have their point and their game. How can we involve that kid in? How can we have him even deciding some of the small things? Just like tuk tuk tuk, can we come in, is already an empowerment. That's my opinion.
Tarek, from listening to you, I can see that one of your favorite parts of clowning is the work with children. Which are the emotional implications of working with children that sometimes are very sick, very ill, and they know at some point they'll die, but also to encourage them for that time to live happy, to live in peace, but also give them hope, the children and their families.
This is the biggest actually emotional time. This is the biggest effect, not only on the kid. You are asking a question now for how can we, because the kid knows that he will die or it's difficult, but it's also the other way around. The team in Palestine are having the clowns, are having a supervisor, a psychologist supervisor who works with them every year 3-4 times in taking out the stories they have, because they are also humans and they work with these kids, and sometimes they lose kids. Sometimes there is this relationship that you build because you do regular visits, and there is a kids who stays really long, and you lose them after sometimes where you build a nice relationship. For me, we can be part of making positive energy, nice atmosphere, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of, but we cannot, that's why I also think we cannot heal. It's not like we are not healers, you know. We can make this beautiful atmosphere that helps in general, because when we do this, it does not only help the patient, it does help the parents who's there, if there is guests there, even the nurses and the doctors, because the atmosphere will be for the whole department, not only in the room, it's everywhere. And this will help everyone to work
but for you specifically, which are the emotional implications for you? Not for the others, for you.
As a clown.
As a clown, as a person also.
This is the point where I told you I had so many stories in as a clown, and it was so difficult, it was not easy. I had to find out ways how to deal with it. And I mean, you can build up this great thing with a kid, and you can lose the kid, for sure. It can happen, or it cannot. For me, I just believed in one thing. After many experience, there is one sentence that was here after all of this experience that was giving me the feeling that it is still great. Even if they die, it is still great, because I believe that we can be the reason of the last smile, the last laughter on that kid. And at least it was the time that he was living in was better because of me. And this is for me a big gift, you know, a big thing, because we reduced the fear or the sadness that is there, a little bit of his life. I mean, because we cannot save his life, it's, you know, but we can make his life a little better.
Margarita, yes. You've been working, sharing your work, because you're an oncologist, with clowning for quite a long time, also around 8 years, in fact 7. But in that period, you've been away, you've been abroad, working in Haiti.
Yes.
And now you came back, and now you're starting all over again. And you are from Santiago de Cuba province, and you were telling me that you work with the people in the mountains, in Contramaestre, Tercer Frente. How is that work? How do people from the countryside of Cuba, from the mountains of Cuba, receive this oncologist who comes also as a clown to work with them, to help them?
Yes, first things, I'm not a clown from profession, but I'm a doctor that uses laughter. Using a red nose, using a white coat with different funny things. So we are using this therapy not only in the main cities, in Santiago and Havana, because countryside have people. Countryside have needed people. And what it is interesting is that we are working not only with the patients in the countryside, we are taking patients from hospitals, kids and pregnant women and persons with cancer. We are moving from the hospital, from their homes, to the countryside to receive a natural treatment. We can say natural treatment using the therapy of laughter with also a patient. And it is so amazing to do it.
Now that you're talking about a smile therapy, I want to ask you again, which is that difference between medical clowns, therapies, clown? How do you conceive them? How is it that you see that character, that role?
Well, I know Tarek have opinion. And we don't want disagreement between us because we are sister and brother, different culture, but we belong to humanity.
Of course.
So everyone, we work with feeling. Even you speak Arabic, Palestinian, English, I speak Spanish. We all human beings, we speak one language. It's the language of the soul. And when we are using therapy of laughter, sometimes you don't use words. We don't use words. Just as a view approach, making some movement. So this is a universal language. We don't need a word for this therapy. And this is amazing. I consider that this is a therapy. I consider this is...
Why?
This is a therapy because you are helping people. You are making people heal themselves. So if you are applying something that helps them to recover their health, so you are doing therapy. Not a conventional that we know, but this is an alternative therapy.
You specifically, how you deal with the emotional implications of being a doctor, but also being a clown. How do you deal with it?
Well, this is a big challenge. Now that I start here in Cuba and in the countryside, that there is a little mentality. But what moved me, what moved my lover is love to patient. And no matter what people think, oh, the doctor, the oncologist is using a red nose, what crazy thing it is. No matter. Because my reason is the patient, that the patient feel well, that the patient recover himself. So I don't care.
How did you felt that need to help in another way ill people, but from the perspective of a clown?
Well, Laura, we use a conventional treatment. In the case of oncology, we use surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, hormone therapy. And even we are using those therapeutic weapons. There are more than 50% of patients that die. So that led me to find other options. And this is how I arrived to the therapy of laughter.
And how you felt doing it? What did it took from you? Where you put of yourself as a human being and that character?
Ooh, well, that's I don't know how I can explain it. But for example, the clown that I use, the therapeutic clown, I call him Doctora Tutti Frutti. I'm Dr. Margarita, but the clown that I use is Tutti Frutti. So this is a different person. Some people say, hey, Dr. Margarita, please. Oh, no, hey, I'm not Dr. Margarita right now. I'm Doctora Tutti Frutti, okay? So this is another character and have a big influence in my life because you are giving treatment to people. So all things in life is a process of feedback. You give, you receive too.
How do you see, how do you consider that therapeutic clowns, medical clowns are seen in Cuba? How the families, the children, how they receive that help?
They receive with open hands. They accept all people, all family, because everyone wants to see their kids heal. So all clowns, come on. If it is a clown, the solution, come on. So they receive it with open hands here in Cuba. And as a big family, we are a big family, the therapeutic clowns, from Pinar del Rio to Guantanamo, completed. We work on, no matter if there are doctors, nurses, psychologists, voluntaries, we are a big family, people from churches.
I want to ask you both, and you tell me, for you as human beings, for you, which is the importance of laughter in not only in recovering ill patients, children, elderly persons, refugees, but in general, which is the importance of laughter? Margarita.
Make connection. That connect you with other people. Create connection. That's, for example, now we three, we make job, so we are connected. We are connected, and this is what we need to rock the wall of professional roles. You are a journalist, you are a clown, a doctor. No, we are human beings.
For you, Tarek?
I cannot say more than this, because it's connection. Laughter is it's a language. It's a language of laughter. You use it for being together. It's a very social, contagious thing to do. Everyone wants to laugh. Everyone likes to laugh. Everyone everyone knows that laughter helps me and helps you and helps everyone. So this is the biggest thing, connection for me and for you.
Well, I thank you both for talking us on teleSUR English about the work that you do, about the importance of laughter, the importance of medical therapeutic clowns, and the work you do, which is very important to give hope to all families, to people in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Peace, y'all. This is G1.
This is Rod Starr.
Together we Rebel Diaz.
And we coming at you live once again from the RDAC DX studio in the South Bronx. And you watching the episode of
And You Don't Stop. Today we follow up the conversation with Chilean 9/11 survivors, the first 9/11, about the legacy of Miguel Enriquez, leader of the ME. Also, we have more word on the street with the people about Che Guevara and the amazing artist Dasik Fernandez on Rooftop Live.
Claudia sits down once again with Nieves Aires, Victor Toro, and Mario Venegas, and they're going to talk about El MIR, the revolutionary leftist movement that they were a part of in the late 60s and early 70s, and they're also going to talk specifically about the influence of arts and culture in their movements and the legacy of Miguel Enriquez. Let's check that out, y'all.
Toda la complejidad del arte y la música pues tenía una importancia primordial.
La parte cultural dentro de los campos de concentración. Ya, ahí habíamos de todos los partidos políticos y estábamos organizados a nivel de todos, pero en especial las compañeras del MIR fuimos bien disciplinadas, bien organizadas, ellas compañeras muy preparadas, muchas intelectuales, profesionales, producíamos blusas, zapatos artesanales, juguetes, todo artesanal que era vendido por otras compañeras fuera y sacadas a otros países. Cada compañera tenía un sueldo de acuerdo a las cargas que tenía familiar, a los hijos, y con lo que ganábamos, iba entrando, con eso íbamos ayudando a las compañeras. Y eso no se había dado en ningún lado, se dio desgraciadamente dentro de un campo de concentración. Después vino la etapa de las arpilleras, que sacamos la idea de la Violeta Parra. Ella bordaba, pero nosotros empezamos a pegar las lanitas y a formar cuadros, a hacer, especialmente eran los de Valparaíso, las estampas de Valparaíso, del puerto, de los trenes que bajaban, los funiculares. Y así cada cual iba creando su arpillera. Después vinimos haciéndolas ya bordadas, porque antes no nos dejaban pasar materiales, entonces había que inventar mucho para que te pasaran dejar una aguja, el hilo, y después producto de las mismas campañas que nosotros hicimos y las denuncias que hicimos que no nos dejaban trabajar, logramos que entraran más elementos para poder trabajar.
Ese legado lo estamos haciendo a diario aquí en la entraña del monstruo. Ese fue la fusión, la tarea del movimiento de la Peña del Bronx. Esa es la fusión y la tarea del movimiento juvenil que encabeza rebeldía a nivel nacional y a nivel internacional. Ese es el legado de Miguel, el legado de Che Guevara, de Malcolm X, de Rosa Parks, de todos los que han luchado y que con sus legados, con sus ejemplos, surgen nuevos movimientos con otros nombres, con otras líricas, con otros cantos, con otras acciones.
For today's segment, we follow up with the hashtag Che Guevara. But once again, we flipped the script on what Word in the Streets has usually been. So right now we're in Hunts Point, my community that I love. We're gonna go into the Point, the community center that's right here. We're gonna talk to the people inside and some of the young folks and see what they know about Che Guevara.
Che organized on behalf of poor people and really inspired people's movement that has rippled throughout society and that we still look to today as an example of what it means to organize and be in solidarity and to create a people's government.
I have no idea who the name of this person is.
Che Guevara.
What do you know about Che Guevara?
He freed Cuba along with Fidel Castro.
Freedom fighter, man. Living life for us, man. Gave his life for us, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, making life better for us. History speaks it. Cuban born, I guess, believe. Yeah. Inspiration for me.
Who's this right here that you're holding up?
Honestly, I don't know much, but I know his name is Cheo, and he was a revolutionist for the Cuban.
I don't really know much about him or his history, but I know his name is Che. He was one of the revolutionists who went to Bolivia and got murdered on the way up there.
All right.
That's the best I can tell you.
I know he helped Fidel Castro with the revolution in Cuba. Like he helped him take over the island. And I think once he was done in Cuba, he went to Bolivia to try to do the same over there. He got captured and he got killed.
He's Che Guevara. He's one of the biggest guys in Cuba. He basically freed Cuba along with Fidel Castro. Later on, he was killed by the FBI, but, you know, bummer. They cut off his thumbs, too, in order to make sure that it was him.
Hold it up. Come on, man, stop running from me, man. Stop running from me, man.
First of all, graffiti is something like very spontaneous. It's something that you have. It's part of the resistance, you know, of the community, of the young people, from the kids, you know. It's part of like saying, yo, I'm here, you know, like that's what I exist. Yeah, I exist, you know, I'm part of this world and I'm as important as, you know, like professionals are, you know, like who are like, you know, working in a office. We are somebody too, and we have our talent, and we are, you know, just doing our stuff in the street, and like, you know, we know the society is up. So that's, you know, the typical graffiti and like bombing and tagging is just an answer, you know, it's a reflection of this society. Then, you know, I think everybody starts from there. And then like you know, gets more skills and gets like, you know, you develop your talent, you know, you are with the same spray can, with the same fat cap maybe, but you start understanding that you can do something different, and instead of just like, you know, like do like tagging, you know, like around, you can start doing some beautiful pieces with the same technique that you use for tagging, you know, like cutting, you know, like how the way they use the fat cap, the distance from the wall and everything. So then, like, it turned out like to be like a fight to get respect from the people. So it's very hard, like, to see spots like this one here in Brooklyn, for example, that people respect or stand up for graffiti. People who doesn't even paint, who is not even an artist, but it's a community, you know, that is like art lovers and like graffiti lovers who like stand up and say, yo, I have walls, I really respect, I really think that this type of expression, you know, like is even better than the stuff that you find out in museums or in art galleries, you know. Even have more value because you are in the street. You are not in a studio where nothing can happen to you. In the street, anything can happen to you. You know, like it can start raining and you have to go home, or if the police come and you don't have the permission, you go to jail. It's straight like that, you know. And you are not even doing anything wrong. You are trying to beautify, you know, like a community, an area. But it's always a fight. You know, to me, graffiti is always like about standing up and like, you know. it's like a statement, you know, like I'm here and this should, you know, matter. Sometimes people have no idea, but sometimes you work 16 hours per day for something that you are not even getting paid, you know? And it's just about, you know, passion and just, to be honest, for me, it's just, I can't stop doing it. You know, like I will die if I stop painting. Right. If I go to an office and I work in an office, I will just, I prefer, you know, like I'd rather die to don't be painting, you know, like.
Peace, y'all. This is D1.
This is Rod Stars.
Together we Rebel Diaz.
And we coming at you from the RDAC BX studio in the Bronx with a new episode of
And You Don't Stop. This week, we have El Reporte at the People's Climate March, a huge march that went down for climate justice in New York City.
G had a chance to hit up Detroit, and then he also had a chance to do a rooftop live with Black Opera. Check it out, y'all. We understand the idea that climate change is affecting all of us because we live this every day on the front lines in the South Bronx. So let's check out an important reporte from the streets from the People's Climate March.
An estimated 400,000 people took to the streets of New York City Sunday at the historic People's Climate March. Earlier in the Bronx, families gathered to denounce local issues before heading downtown to join the march.
That's what we have to think about today. Which side are we on when we're marching in this march? You know, we're really bringing this contingency out through justice. When we start talking about the Bronx, everybody wants to talk about the bad things that's happening. But if you look around, all these people who are doing great stuff, healthy children, good jobs with living wages and respect and integrity. We want to grow better communities. We want to grow clean air.
We want to live. That's it. It's plain and simple. We want to live. We know that everything that's happening in the community that we live in, we've been a dumping ground for a long time. The air is dirty. We live right by a highway. You know, we want a community that we can raise our kids in.
Breast milk is supposed to be the best thing for your babies. In the Bronx, my breast milk was contaminated, like all the other mothers in the Bronx. So if that's pure from my body that produces the best thing for them, you can imagine how polluted the food that we're eating, our vegetables are.
Thousands descended on Midtown Manhattan, shutting down traffic as the streets filled up.
Hey guys! Vamos a la marcha. Vamos. Get back in.
I think it's important to take care of the environment because if you don't, then you can't really, you'll be living sadly and you won't have like fresh water to drink and nice food and you won't have much animals that are still alive. So it's going to be hard for you to live.
We're here part of the Indigenous delegation to make sure that Indigenous voices are heard. Climate change affects all of us, but especially affects those on the front lines. Indigenous peoples, people of color, our farmers, our campesinos, those on the living off the land. And so in any discussion about climate change, those on the front line, those that you see before you, have to be on the forefront of that because we are on the forefront of that change. It's an issue for all of us. And so hopefully it opens eyes to see that this is something massive and bigger, and it's going to grow bigger and bigger.
Others spoke to the issue of economic inequality and framing the struggle for climate justice.
A lot of people here understand that this is not like just about changing your light bulbs, that we have a deeply unjust economic system. But I think the more exciting part is that so many people here understand that by confronting that logic of greed and endless growth, there will be a better economy. There's an understanding that when the planet wins, the people win too. Better jobs, cleaner air, a more equal, compassionate, loving society.
The march culminated on the city's west side with music, theater, dance, and art installations meant to inspire and mobilize.
And your future. Let's be very clear, I ain't here to drink beer, smoke weed, shoot the breeze, and break bread with you. I'm only here to resurrect the living dead with you. Thought it was some kind of a game, I'm not playing with you. I got the Moorish warlords with Moroccan sharks, one Ethiopians with white face camouflage. Already disciplined and ready for that sabotage. You listen to Minaj? Word? You should kill yourself and everybody that you came with. Arrangements out into restriction, no arraignment. My name gets mentioned through the ethers, through high frequency speakers. Certified, fortified, getting live. Make this revolution rap your favorite pastime. Make listen to cool tunes your very last time. Last time he was CO and now he's gangstified. Pushing keys, catching
From New York City, this is G1, and you don't stop. teleSUR English.
Yes, y'all, another Rooftop Live. Today we are in Detroit. We have the pleasure of having with us the brother Majestic Legend and Buff One, Jamal Buffer. Together they are the Black Opera, representing Detroit, representing Michigan. Brothers, first of all, thank y'all for being on the program. Thank you for being here with us. I've got in tune with y'all music, and I know y'all have been in the game for some time as individuals. Let us know a little bit about how y'all come together and what Black Opera is.
The Black Opera was introduced to us as an artistic collective, so we can't really get too much into the origin because we're still figuring out ourselves. But when it was time for the Black Opera to do the music portion of their movement, they hollered at us and a lot of other artists around the world. You know, it's a lot of them out there. Still a lot of voices is coming out. So, but it's been a pleasurable experience for me to be a part of the movement and get up on the knowledge that they bestowed to me and all of that, and get to hear my voice heard. You know, so it's really good. But yeah, it's TVO.
We, Jamal Buffer, Majestic Legend, we've known each other for, yeah, probably about at least 15, 16 years. He's from Detroit. I'm originally from Ann Arbor. You know, my crew, Athletic Mike League, started coming out here and doing shows. He was in a crew called Subterraneous, started coming out to Ann Arbor doing shows. So we've known each other for 15, 16 years.
Pay attention. You are now about to witness a live demonstration by the Black Opera. This is the Black Op era. Spread the warning.
Pull your guns out, niggas pull your guns out. If that's the way you battle, you gon' have to shoot my tongue out. Cause all I do is talk loud, man, and run my mouth. I walk around with a sound, man, adjusting down. It's for the over and the underground. I'm somewhere in the middle, like my mama had an older and a younger child.
Wow.
You know I shine like the sun is out. When you come around, it gets gloomy like a thundercloud.
Down.
I am having so much fun with this. You working all hard, trying to think of stuff to come up with. If rap was a marathon, some will jog, some will sprint. Consider me a Kenyan with the catalog you run against. My track record stockpiling based on quality and productivity. You deserve fire. All in my ear talking about how hard you're grinding. I put out albums yearly. It sounds like you're lying.
Stop lying.
I have seen not one dropping. My car is clean and over yours I'm squatting. Year after year I hit the people with the pepper and deliver to your door like my name was Doug Heffernan. Some of y'all gon' really hate me after this verse, but if you read the credits, your name ain't on the insert. I guess I'm a jerk like Josh Remsburg, cause I care not of your opinion for what it's worth. Oh, and this is the legendary kingdom. Pistons, lions, tigers, bears, leopards, and the zebras. We live a wild life, save the letters mail from Peter. The newest crew that you should know, TBO season.
And this is why I speak up. When niggas pledge allegiance to the re-up, and chickens never let a nigga prenup. They dedicate to getting in your pockets like some Leon. My extra papers fall into the vapors in a weon. And we are shadows in the distance like some elephants. They see us. Mathematics missing like the number man. They cheat us. My piece of arithmetic, your chemistry to me. Come again, I was thinking about some D cups. Double meaning, also classic up in Henny water. Bubbling D-boys falling like trouble T-Roy. You know the Jake Steves break freeze like a B-boy. My telekinesis when your tree trunks. I tell the police to treat my P-what. But melanin means that I'm the Shia. We make it right. Money while they take your track. Money black. On it still they sprinkle crack. On his back. On it like a treadmill. We run shit. Gunning through the jungle with a hell and compass.
Peace, y'all. This is G1.
This is Rod Star.
Together we are Rebel D.I.
And we coming at you from the RDAC DX with a new episode of And You Don't Stop.
This week, we have more reporting from the People's Climate March in New York City, where we had arts and culture demanding climate justice.
And then another Rooftop Live with Black Opera.
G1 with teleSUR English. We are here at the New York City Climate Justice March. There are thousands of people on the streets. This has turned into a festival, a celebration of sorts. We have hip hop going on. We have people dancing.
set in stone. So let me in my zone throw this dog a bone. Cause I spit bars for those native kids at home who got wounds and scars, who dreams go far. You got a jump shot, you a red superstar. Take a cruise in my car screaming fuck the law. We don't know no better when adults withdraw. Bumping first of the month on the first of the month. From the womb to the hearse, dirty shirt, what I want.
Yeah, and you don't stop, cause it's 187 on the Sean Bell Costas. Yeah, and you don't stop, cause it's 187 on the Ramona Grand Five. Yeah, and you don't stop, cause it's 187 on the Mama Duke Costas. Yeah, and you don't stop, said it's 187 on every corrupt guy. Say the police, the police.
Claim you never knew. They say that you are living in these stolen lands. Stolen lands, bet you didn't know. Stolen lands, my people ain't gonna take it no more. Stolen lands, time to settle the score. Stolen lands, checking native people.
We keep it razor, double shot without the chaser. My soliloquies are high frequency, so raise the fader. Run tell a neighbor, hip hop's resuscitator. Freshly caught food for thought brought, so tip the waiter. The gladiator, I'm not bingy in a sick shoe. I'm laid back with an all met 6'2". We camouflage black, laid back 6'2". Then we levitate weightless bird's eye view. Boom. I didn't sign up for the show and tells. I do this thing here for Oscar Grant and Sean Bell. I rap well for those that held before the shells fell. The melanated concentrated up in prison cells. And well, now that we're finished with the introductions and everyone is here is clear on following instructions, put your hands up higher to their vertical and rock out as I sew it up surgical.
Sweet.
First things first, I'm the realest. Drop this and let the whole world feel.
When the beat drops, we gonna reach out our way. Left and right, right? So we gonna try it. This is all. Left, right,
Dice lo que hace. Ideas into action. Move faster, it's time to save the planet. When you standing, which way is you going? Which side is you supporting? They build up, we show love. They under the dollar, I'm like peace to the gods.
Yes, y'all, another Rooftop Live. Today we are following up with the Black Opera. I also know that y'all sometimes refer to it as the Black Op era. Share a little bit about that double meaning.
The Black Op era came when the music came. That's our era. Right. We're the voices that are going to get the message out, and it's really that simple. So we've been recruited, and we've been, nominated to also recruit people too. So that's the Black Ops. They're everywhere. It might be a teacher, it might be a homie, it might be a gangbanger, it might be a reverend. They're all out there, and they're connected to the TBL. So.
You also do some work in the community. You're building with the young people.
I'm privileged enough to work at this teen center in Ann Arbor, Michigan called the Neutral Zone. About a year ago, I actually became music coordinator overseeing all the music programs. So really, with the Neutral Zone, it's really about teen voice and creating leaders. We have 7 different music programs, but we also have tons of other different programs.
I represent a company called Legend Lab. I'm an independent contractor, so I go to the location. Like he's at the location, he is the location. I'm more like a mobile lab, but the kids get an opportunity to learn, you know, songwriting. They get coached in live performance, production, MCing, basically all the things that I know how to do. I've made the structure so I can share it with them. So it's really a beautiful thing. And I go from Ann Arbor to Westland to Detroit. I'll go anywhere.
Black like funeral attire, dead mic. You might lose me in a night. Turn on your headlights. I'm black, y'all. So black, I had to say it twice. As long as blood is blue in my vein, minus the red, white America. Trying to keep a killer cage. Butterfly effect, got us in the caterpillar stage. The black opera finna blow, y'all finna hate. Once the outcast, now we feeling good, feeling great. Africa medallion, chain around my neck is wood. Stunting on you hoes, man, I really wish a peck of wood. Stand like a man in the places y'all ain't never stood. And shake the hands and get respect from those you never could. And this is just a half of what's cracking. Little something for the cats that like raps about rapping. Champ status rapping with a Pacquiao accent. Alley-oop passing, ask them what's happening.
What is this? A mockery of triumph? Contagion presidents like I'm a doctor to the tyrant. Taste testers bite their tongue, which is cursing its desire. Your career's worst fear here. Electric cheer the Amish Jebediah. Head is higher than a prostitute for pilots. Kings call me sire, I'm a god, Zeus is goddess. Me and my empire got a body like Colossus. Singing my Sinatra's through a cloudy roof in London. Death to all imposters unless they on my roster. Niggas falling off, getting lost cause they starstruck. Show the Conning Squadron, Decepticon Optimus. Optimist the pessimist, chameleon obvious. Won't know what my monster to the clock is thinking opposite. Exploding all their arms like a bomb inside an octopus. Skull inside the palm, crystal balls are like binoculars. Fighting for the cause of fight, I cause apocalypse. Writings on the wall, this ain't a game, I'm not a comic, no. Taylor got a suit with your name like Mubarak. In pinstripes, these little guys is pop warners. Shoot him in the eye, put him in the Glock coma, push it to your hideout. Give up chase like cops running. Computer suicide, you clicks away from bonfires. Explosion, Pearl Harbor, niggas trying to overthrow the Contra.
When human rights are left in the background, people organize and mobilize themselves to overcome their problems. teleSUR Documentaries presents a crisis that is not just economic, but is also political, social, and even spiritual. When the droplets turn into rain. Sunday, only on teleSUR.
Me gustaría tener un mundo mucho más inclusivo para todos.
没有贫穷.
Στην ανθρωπότητα θα ήθελα να δω παραπάνω αγάπη, αγνότητα, πολιτισμό και επαφή με τη φύση.
Que el ser humano despierte su conciencia.
I want humanity to see itself as one humanity.
We are the people, a space, a voice. We are teleSUR without borders.
Welcome to Real Lives, a young greeting from Mexico City, where we walk around emblematic and historical places in order to know how to live in this country. The celebration of the Day of the Dead. My name is Aisa Garcia, and I invite you to accompany for the next half an hour. As always, I want to remind that you can follow it in our social networks, because we like a lot interacting with our audience. On Instagram and Twitter, we ask us at Vidas teleSUR. And now let's take a look at this week's most relevant cultural information. Let's check it out. Ali Primera, poet and activist, a native of Falcon State. In each of his compositions, collecting the suffering of this sector victim of social inequality. And it is that during the years 70, 80, and the 90s, the Venezuelan people were immersed in a deep crisis of poverty and injustice.
Neither innocence doesn't kill people nor save them. It will save your conscience and that I bet my soul.
Solo se mojaron y en la orilla están.
He was characterized by a singer of a protest, clarified that his song, rather than a protest, it was a necessary song. Faced with the realities he denounced with his music, he was voted by the media and by the government of the former president Rafael Caldera. So he founded his label called Cirragon. His first album, titled De Una Once, was recorded in 1972 for Germany. There are included emblematic themes such as Tin Marín. Praying is not enough. And carved ceilings.
Qué triste se oye la lluvia en las casas de cartón.
His song was declared in 2005 national patrimony by the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez Frias. At his 74 years of his birthday, Ali feels is alive more than ever, and this illustrious single is a cultural and artistic icon and inspiration for many troubadours.
That my singing doesn't get lost.
Photographers from different parts in the world from Chile participate in the 9th National Photography Festival of Valparaíso. This year, the reflection will be around the question, is time an illusion? A question that will make you think of memory, the past and the future of the present, of a rectangle in your hand. This year, the central exhibition of the media is in charge of 5 photographers, portraying the city of Valparaíso under their own vision. Artists as Manuel Castillo, Sergio Domínguez, Paula López, Julia Toro, and Marisa Valenzuela exhibit their works. Likewise, other samples are present in the cultural event, like the exhibition Lost Image, Wild Image, homage to the Peruvian photographer Martín Chambi. In addition to the photographic reach, they make for 5 days more than 50 photographers meet and collect, and they travel around the city with the aim of answering concerts and then translating into their creation in pictures. As part of the celebration, the year the Side Curtain was installed. This invites citizens to participate and use the space where exhibition and photographic exercises are present. The festival will take place during the month of November. Almost 100 years of history, part of the National Museum of Damascus that collects pieces since 1999, and due to the environmental start one of the most emblematic cultural space of Syria, closed its doors to protect the historical pieces and collections. After 3 years, the museum decided to start operations and again exhibiting the country's ancient cultural heritage.
The reopening of the museum shows that civilization has conquered terrorism, and the National Museum of Damascus has witnessed the long and bright history of the Syrian people. The reopening is important. We will reopen other museums and other historical sites.
More than 1,500 sculptures, pages, and artifacts are part of the exhibition that went through a recovery process after being damaged by extremist attacks.
They are valued for the Syrian culture in general. It is very difficult to observe this destruction, but it's also important to look to the future and try to rebuild and fix in the reconstruction.
We have many experts in cultural relics in Damascus, but that is not enough because many relics were damaged during the war. We need more financial support and expert training to help us restore the relics and historical places.
During the Regeneration Museum, seminars were held with experts discussing the protection and restoration of the cultural sites that are part of the antiquity and history of Syria. Today, in real life we delight with the scores, piano, and musical notes of the Venezuelan Leonel Ruiz composer, singer, arranger, pianist, cuatro player, troubadour, and poet. Do you want to know more about his career? Let's see and stay from the Zócalo in Mexico City, where the Day of the Dead, the Day de los Muertos, is celebrated. Leonel Ruiz, pianist, arranger, singer, and composer. He grew up in a family of musicians, writers, and poets, for an artistic expression that he developed in a fluid, natural way. His abundant gray hair and his white cell make the man of the murmur with the hot prayer.
Wow, I was surprised here. You got me here. How are you?
The love of music comes from a very early age.
From the maternal womb, my mother says, Mrs. Ruth Herman, doctor of Placidada Leonor Guevara Rivas, tells me that she put me in that breeze of her, in that beautiful place. She gave me music of Vivaldi especially, music of Bach, and sang to me, and I whispered songs, Otilio Galíndez. So that started long before I was born. I come a very musical family.
Pleno como la luna llena, comandante de Juan Nicolás. Tenemos pueblo, tenemos patria.
On the other hand, since I have use of reason, I was taken to countless musical evenings where musicians played extraordinary Venezuelan popular music.
With his music, he traveled to several countries, but it was Spain that gave him the opportunity to grow and meet pianists. Then he returned to his country, Venezuela, with projects.
So I went to Spain, and while in Spain I had the opportunity, many times almost by chance, to study there with a pianist who I admired a lot. Which that is called Chick Corea. I returned to my age of Venezuelan music, where I was arranging, composing, and playing, and directing the band of Cecilio Tote. Cecilio Tote's music group.
His voice and the delivery of each letter has been the powerful reason that marked his childhood and for all his life.
In view of the given powerful and diversity range of possibilities I have in that trunk of songs of music, I can give you, let's put it in three parts. There's one that through my whole life, of my childhood, has marked me. And it's a song of Otilio Galíndez, as well as listen to the song and says, when I grow up, I want to be something. I still don't know if I've done it. I think that it's very difficult. Otilio Galíndez is very big, and the song is... Nothing less and nothing more than now.
Ahora que el invierno se prende de las hojas.
The piano has been his companion in his heart of singing in and out of his native country.
Through the piano, I have had innumerable versions in amazing places, like a jazz festival far away from here, outside of Venezuela, for example.
Their greatest inspiration has been great composers.
Muchas veces te dije que antes de hacerlo había que pensarlo muy bien.
Un colibrí que en su enramaje estaba. Mi unicornio azul ayer se me perdió. Pastando lo dejé.
Nunca podrás morir porque al pueblo le haces falta, porque su dicha es tan alta que ya no vuelve a sufrir.
These composers have influenced me. Otilio, along with Mariano Rivera, are composers who have influenced me very much.
He has been inspired by many troubadours, and Silvio Rodriguez has been a great musical influence for Lionel.
And there is a song, I'll play a bit. I repeat, maybe tomorrow you ask me the question. And the only one that invariably will not change is that of Otilio Galíndez. But at this moment I think I was surprised. All this interview is a big surprise. The other song is this. Doesn't need presentation. Nothing less and nothing more than Silvio Rodriguez, Unicornio.
His love for the Bolivarian Revolution has led him to write letters with a cultural content and murmuring hot bread in this present, as he said.
Liberaste suelos y marrón, con claveles y esquirlas de febrero, con la brasa del prócer del amor.
Well, here we have the previous album of To the Words of Chavez. Obligatory mention to the national center of the disc that I produced, this and the previous disc also, and the Ministry of the Culture. This disc is called Mere Mere with Hot Bread, that gives name to my musical proposal, the group that accompanies me.
Leonel Ruiz will continue to be charged with traditional rhythms and his little community social struggle and the rescue of his people, culture and memory.
Yo quiero un amor tropical, muy cerca del mar, con luces del atardecer que encienda al mirar. Yo quiero un amor de verdad.
I am a native of fire, kept high of the breath of thunder, which propagates the music of a storm.
Do you know what time it is? It is time to show these monumental skills. There are in the city of Mexico that were inspired by the great Catrina or José de Guadalupe, a Mexican categories, and he was one to say that that is democracy, because in the end it was dark. Rich or poor, all people are being in schools, and the Catrina is not missing any celebration in Mexico. It is truly an icon of the culture of this country and a symbol that reflects the death. But you know the origin of the Katrina? And now we tell you here in Real Lives. The Katrina is 107 years old. It was invented by Jose Guadalupe Posada, a Mexican cartoonist, and it was used for many years as a satire of the political and social life in Mexico of the 19th century. And Diego Rivera made it the icon that remains permanent until today. Far from being synonymous with death and terror, in Mexico the schools mean rebellion, fighting, and mocking as well.
Don't see it like a tragedy, other ways, more cheerfully, more colorful way. And not of death that means tragedy, but of death that means transcending. Joy, color, and new state. It has color, makes you remember where you come from and where you are going to go. Know to enjoy every moment because life is short and you have to live it intensely.
The original name was School Garavancera, word with which it was known then for the people who sold garbanzos that have an indigenous of blood pretending to be Europeans, forsaking their own race, inheritance, and culture as well. The design of room, social school without clothes with a hat, which from its point of view is a critique for many Mexicans of town who sought to a pure European lifestyle that they don't belong there. Accurate date, the Katrina, one of the day, is part of the creation of the popular invention, a cultural tool that emerged for the livings in canvas for 2008. This is the reason why UNESCO declares this festival intangible cultural heritage of the humanity in Mexico. To be part of the Mexican living culture, it uses customs that are drawn in different films and mountains. For example, the funny magical story of Coco, that revolves around the tradition of the Day of the Dead, El Día de los Muertos.
¡Estoy soñando!
¿Qué te pasa?
Once a year, soldiers return and live in the cemeteries during the day or night, flock and place candles on the graves as a way to illuminate the path of the souls on the way to return home. The celebration of the Day of the Dead is one of the traditions that are respected here in Mexico. I hope you have enjoyed it a lot, because we have reached the end of Real Life. The invitation, as always, is to send your comments and suggestions to our email address vidas@telesurtv.net and follow our social networks as well. In Instagram and Twitter, we are at vidastelesur. We'll leave you with the video clip of the court case, Julieta Don Zorro and Mary Van Verden, la canción para bañar a la niña. Goodbye, see you in another installment of Real Life. Goodbye.
Ya la luna baja en camisón a bañarse en un charquito con jabón. Ya la luna baja en tobogán, revoleando su sombrilla de azafrán. Quien la pesque con una cañita de bambú se la lleva a Siukiu. Ya la luna viene en palanquín a robar un crisantemo del jardín. Ya la luna viene por allí, su kimono dice no, no y ella sí. Quien la pesque con una cañita de bambú se salvarse con azúcar la nariz. Ya la luna en puntas de pie, en una tacita china tomate. Quien la pesque con una cañita de bambú, se la lleva a Siukiu. Ya la luna vino y le dio tos por comer con 2 palitos el arroz. Ya la luna baja desde allá y por el charquito Quito nadará. Quien la pesque con una cañita de bambú, se la lleva a Siukiu.
When human rights are left in the background, people organize and mobilize themselves to overcome their problems. teleSUR Documentaries presents a crisis that is not just economic, but is also political, social, and even spiritual. When the droplets turn into rain. Sunday, only on teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
Enjoy our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on culture, innovation, conservation, human well-being. Keep up to date on the latest innovations in science and technology with Atomun. The habits and knowledge you need to live a healthy lifestyle are on Guide Your Body. Environmental consciousness is required to preserve our Earth. Undergo your transformation on Green Zone. All about equity, diversity, and respect for identities on By Gender. Cultural manifestations, the art in all its forms, and the stories of real lives. Every day we feature a wide variety of content. Only on teleSUR, the news source from Latin America and the Caribbean.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR. teleSUR brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on teleSUR.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on teleSUR. The Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transform the world today. Mondays, only on teleSUR. In a world infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on teleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your green zone. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on teleSUR.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. teleSUR documentaries. Sundays, only on teleSUR.
Reparations, a sensitive issue on both sides of the debate and long considered untouchable in U.S. politics, has come blazing back into national conversation thanks to a fiery essay and recent events in Ferguson, Missouri. Where do we go from here? That's today on The Global African. I'm Bill Fletcher, your host. Thanks for joining us. The reparations debate has returned, in large part because of the contribution of Ta-Nehisi Coates, whose essay in The Atlantic has shaken many people, reawakened interest in a debate that periodically surfaces like a seasonal flower. Reparations is about repair and repairing damage. It's a debate that takes place not just in connection with the African experience in the Western Hemisphere, but internationally. Whether one is talking about repairing the damage that was the result of the Japanese invasion of China and Korea and the enslavement of Japanese women by Imperial Japan, or whether it's about the experience of the African in the Western Hemisphere, reparations is about repairing the damage, but it can only take place in the context of discussing history. That is, there must be a willingness of a country and its total population to come to terms with their own history. And this is the problem that we in the United States face, that we would rather avoid discussing the past unless we want to discuss a myth. We'd rather avoid looking at problems, errors, horrors, atrocities. We'd rather focus on what we would like to believe that the past was. But when you engage in myth-making and in the beliefs in myths, you can't repair the damage that was actually done. And we're joined in the studio with Professor N.D.B. Connolly. Professor Connolly is assistant professor of history and a co-director of the Racism, Immigration, and Citizenship program at the Johns Hopkins University. He's the author of A World More Concrete, Real Estate and the Remaking of Jim Crow South Florida, published by the University of Chicago Press. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bill.
So let's jump right in. The Coates article on reparations that was in The Atlantic, your response?
I had been a follower of some of Coates' writings for about 3 or 4 years before this piece came out. One of my favorite pieces was Fear of a Black President. He'd done some other work on Bill Cosby and kind of class dynamics. And so there was a lot of publicity for the reparations piece just before it came out in March of this year. Mm-hmm. And I was, anticipating it, as were many people. And so I kind of sat down and grabbed a copy and just, read the whole thing in hard copy from beginning to end. And when I first read it, my initial reaction, to be honest, was a little bit of envy, because I think he's got a lot of talent as a writer, but even more to the point, he's got a way of bringing a really complicated and difficult history to the public in a way that many historians simply kind of dream of having that kind of audience. Now, in terms of the initial point about, Israel and reparations to Israel, it was less a concern for me about the actual dynamics of the specific Israeli case than it was about believing in a kind of nation-building project, that you could somehow separate a subsidized nation-building project from a racial project. In terms of my own research and the work of a lot of other historians, it's become very clear that when you're trying to build a country and you have to determine who are citizens and who aren't, how you go about allocating resources, oftentimes racism continues to get perpetuated through those mechanisms and through the playing of certain kind of preferential treatments, or even trying to figure out among minority groups which elites are going to dictate who gets what. And it tends to create some tensions between poorer and wealthier minorities.
Many, just to be clear, there are many people involved in the reparations movement, mm-hmm. but not entirely, that do look at reparations as a means of laying the foundation for the creation of an African American nation. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're criticizing?
In part. I think the discussion of creating a nation within a nation, I know, for example, Republic of New Africa in the late 1960s was, very much committed to this idea. And I think we have to really, think through, one, what nation building requires, how we're willing to support the state monopoly on violence, which seems to be necessary for nation building projects, how you talk about generating wealth and using, capitalism to create niche markets that can become, very exploitative. Oftentimes, black-on-black predation occurs under these environments of, kind of isolated, national communities where people don't have options. And I'm certainly, can talk more about that specifically. I think there's a real need to think about class dynamics under capitalism within black communities before we start talking about building nations.
But even, let's open it up a little broader, because not everyone that supports reparations supports an independent black republic or something like that.
Right.
But the basic notion of reparations is repairing the damage. And so there's those that look at the damage as being the period of slavery. There are those that look at the damage as sort of a continuing violation of our rights. So how is the notion of reparations as an expression of an effort to repair the damage, how is that inconsistent with challenges to capitalism itself as a system?
So when you're thinking about reparations for slavery, I hold what may be a minority view that it's going to be impossible to quantify the loss of lives, the loss of man hours, broken up families, sexual violations, all of the things that went into slavery as an institution. It literally is priceless. You cannot put a number on that. And the way in which the country, especially in the 20th century, generated its wealth and really became a superpower had as much to do with segregation and Jim Crow as it had to do with the previous wealth accumulations that were done under slavery. So from where I sit, simply putting slavery in a jar and saying, okay, we're going to look at black loss of life, black hardship from 1619 to 1865, or even bring it up through the Reconstruction period and thinking about just the difficulties there. That's not going to actually solve our problem, because the deeper problem are those continuities that came out of slavery, the difficulties that blacks had of holding on to land once they in fact acquired it.
If it's not inconsistent with the larger question of capitalism, then what's your then I'm trying, maybe that goes into the second part of your critique of the essay.
Yeah, so in terms of the argument put forward, a lot of what Coates describes as being a starting point comes out of John Conyers' House Resolution 40, which asks for an allocation of $8 million to just begin talking about and studying the legacies of slavery. And there are a couple of reasons why the bill hasn't been brought through. Obviously, there's one issue that revolves around the fact that getting anything through Congress is going to be difficult, especially one dominated by right-wing Republicans in many respects. But there's also another issue that gets raised about the political will among African Americans to really push this issue, because $8 million, as you know, is a drop in the bucket in terms of the kinds of resources that African Americans have at their disposal. I mean, LeBron James and Jay-Z and Beyonce could pull their resources and come up with $8 million tomorrow if they wanted to.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So the issue is not necessarily the $8 million and getting that allocated. The issue is, are we actually willing to open up a conversation about a word that most people don't want to use, which is white supremacy, right? Particularly among black elites who have gone through a lot of trouble to work their way into positions of power and have some kind of stake in making sure that peace and prosperity kind of continue without too much trouble along kind of historical lines. So on the one hand, I think pushing for a House resolution is not going to be the way to go, just because of the nature of Congress, and by virtue of that, resource being spent, what we would have is more research on capitalism and slavery and exploitation, and we already kind of have a pretty robust historical literature on this. Like, we know a lot about how slavery worked, how slavery and capitalism worked together. We know a lot about how people made money off of segregation in the 20th century. So as far as beginning a process of healing or repair, there's enough on the books already to get that ball rolling. And so I take a little bit of issue with that. The other thing is that, in terms of what I mentioned earlier, like restructuring society, there are a couple of very concrete things that I think we can do. Again, that don't necessarily get addressed in Coates' piece, but I think obviously he's thinking about these things. One is having a 15th Amendment that has some real teeth in it, that makes voting rights a positive right, not simply a right that the states so-called can't take away, right? Because in this country, you're not actually guaranteed voting by the Constitution. I think that needs to change. I think there needs to be a way that we guarantee that even if you're convicted of a felony, you don't lose the franchise. That would fundamentally change from the outset the relationship between black communities and the political process in the age of mass incarceration. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing I think we can do is deal with the jurisprudence that came after the civil rights movement that's made it very difficult to get civil rights legislation through or make other kinds of breakthroughs for racial inequality. And what I'm speaking about specifically is a legal standard that since the mid-1970s has been known as discriminatory intent. So disparate impact is a legal standard where you could just present evidence to the court
Precisely.
and say, 80% of African Americans suffer disproportionately under, public housing allotments or because of employment restrictions. Now you have to actually prove that on the basis of race, somebody meant to deny you those goods and services,
That's right.
which is almost an impossible legal standard to
Precisely.
meet, right?
Right.
So we have to address that, and I think there's a way that very smart attorneys can think about bundling together case law the way they bundled it together in the age of Plessy, and really work, sometimes over several decades, to actually get the standard of discriminatory intent on the table for discussion and challenge, not simply the cases like stand your ground or the like. The biggest problem is what I perceive to be the problem of white popular sovereignty, which is a political cultural problem wherein, by all accounts, the American people as a group are understood to be white Americans, right? The black populations and the brown populations of this country, have never really been considered part of the mass electorate, even under a black president. And the example that I point to in the article that I write in response to Coates is, Barack Obama's response to the birther movement, right? Where he's basically getting a very small but vocal group of white Americans who demand to see his birth certificate on the basis of, unfounded suspicions.
Right.
And the president has to actually use government resources to send his representative to Hawaii and furnish this long, form birth certificate to an unnamed population, like based on what? The other example of this comes in the case of Cliven Bundy in Nevada, right? You may remember the white rancher who basically decided he wasn't going to pay taxes on government land he was using to graze his cattle, right? The Bureau of Land Management goes out there and tries to make him, furnish those taxes, and a white militia basically makes the government flee from the scene of the conflict. Again, that's an act that and I know would never happen in an inner city black community or Latino community where folks would take up arms and put up a kind of stand against the government, right? But that happens in places where whites are allowed to basically take arms and control. So I would suggest that there's a bigger kind of political culture that needs to be addressed, and that even beyond simply having conversations about it, you can actually change rules and change laws that would make that a far less sustainable American tradition.
Professor, we're going to have you back.
Okay. I'm happy to come back. That's fine.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Professor Conley.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Okay, cool.
Thank you very much. And we're joined by Professor Adjoa Ayatoro, who is a founding member of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. She was a founding chair and currently chairs its Legal Strategies Committee. She's a law professor at the University of Arkansas William H. Bowman School on Law, and the director of the Racial Disparities in the Arkansas Criminal Justice System Research Project. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with a question about the very popular article in The Atlantic by Ta-Nehisi Coates regarding reparations. And I was curious what your feelings were about both the article, its analysis, but also the response that it's received.
You asked me about the response to it. Well,
Correct.
the response that I heard and saw was, in fact, a response that from the reparations community was very embracing, again, very much saying yes. The response also to me keeps that discussion alive, because I think we've had a lull in the discussion on reparations, and I think it keeps it makes it a national focus because of the person who was writing the article had a national forum, and so I think the response to it that I heard that was positive is good from the reparations community and others too. I don't think they would that was the only positive response. And I always feel any negative response, and I didn't see a lot of negative response, but I didn't research in that in terms of response. But my view has always been with reparations since we first started COBRA first started back in the late 80s, is that any response is a good response because it keeps the discussion out there and allows us to have the debate, but also allows us to move forward in our goal of one day obtaining reparations.
Let's pick up on take off from that. one of the things that I was looking forward to in speaking with you is that you're not only a theorist when it comes to reparations, but you're a movement builder. And,
Yes.
and I'm interested in your sense as to what have been some of the challenges in actually moving the reparations discussion, including within Black America, but not just exclusively Black America?
The biggest challenges, I think, are one, that some people put it forward as a reparations for slavery. And one of the things that my friend, mentor, and colleague Ron Walters said to me a number of years ago when we were forming the reparations in Cobra, I'm sorry, is that we have to make people understand that it's not about some historical fact. It's about current day injury that people are having that is linked directly to the enslavement and Jim Crow period.
What will it take then to turn it into a mass movement?
I think it takes more of us who are in movement building, and I count you as one, Bill, to really push the issue back into our organizations that we are members of and leaders of.
Let me ask you one more question, which is, how do you handle the argument? And it's an argument that we often hear also in context of affirmative action, that reparations for African Americans as a whole is problematic, that it should be something that's somehow targeted on the basis of class or poverty within Black America.
Well, I answer that question, and I've consistently answered that question because it's not, as you know, it's not a new question. It's a question, it's a point that was raised even as we formed in Cobra in the late 80s into the 90s by some people that call themselves allies to reparations, but want to pare it down to those that they view in quotes are the most deserving, which are poor Black people. Well, it wasn't just poor Black people that they enslaved. It wasn't just poor Black people that suffered from Jim Crow. It's not just poor Black people who continue with the vestiges of slavery. We still have a problem, you know, with Black people at all levels being treated in a racist way that's linked to our enslavement. The second thing I think it does is it marginalizes our communities and it makes our communities fight within themselves. And it's like, you know, Oprah Winfrey said some years ago, well, I don't want reparations. I don't need it. Well, if you don't need it, sign it over to a charity, you know? So my view is that reparations are owed to African descendants in the United States. I also think that if in fact your concern is the poorest of the poor, and then you need to do some additional things addressing class, but that's not reparations for the crime of slavery and Jim Crow. That's something else. That becomes a class issue that we need to deal with.
Got it. Well, thank you very much, Professor Adjoa Ayatoro, for spending this time with us and talking with us about this. And I'd like to pursue some of these issues of strategy and the reparations movement on another episode. But thank you very much for your time. And thank you for joining us for this segment of The Global African. I'm your host, Bill Fletcher. We'll be back in a moment. It's a pleasure and an honor to be joined today by Professor Charles Ogletree, the Jesse Clemenko Professor of Law of Harvard Law School, and the founding and executive director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice at the Harvard Law School. Professor Ogletree, welcome to the program.
I'm pleased to be on the program today.
I wanted to start with a discussion of the Coates article on reparations from The Atlantic, and just your thoughts about the content of the article as well as the reception that it's received.
Well, let me say a word about the article. I'm glad that Coates wrote it because it had a lot to do with talking about reparations. But I've heard from people who read Atlantic all the time that this is the most popular article ever written in the magazine. And people, black, white, male, female, left, right, whatever their political affiliation may be, read this article and got something from it, even if they disagree with some of the findings. And said a little bit about the author. What was made it so significant is that this is the year 2014, and the whole idea that the reparations movement, which we talked about decades ago, still has not only some vitality, but has a lot of people trying to figure out where it's going to go. And the final thing I want to say is that there have already been, in 2014, some granting of reparations. The role that the Germans have played with some societies, the role that people around the diaspora have been able to get some reparations. And I can tell you right now, having traveled from Los Angeles to Boston, from the West Coast all the way through the East Coast, people are still asking me every single week, you know, what's happening with the reparations movement? It's alive, it's well. We're trying to make sure that this government, like other governments, are responding to the need to give people something that they deserve.
It seems clear that there's a sentiment, at least an interest within Black America on reparations, but it's not clear to me that there's a movement. Would you disagree?
There is a movement. I'm going to Los Angeles in October, and I've already been contacted by people about that. I've been contacted by individuals who carry these signs about reparations for people of African descent, who are doing it not just when there's a demonstration, not just when there's a rally, but every single day. And people are asking for more information. And so it is clear. And you have to remember that when we started this effort, many of the people have, in a sense, some of them have passed away, and some of them have no longer been involved in it. So it's a whole new generation. And they want to learn about reparations. And what makes it even more significant, it's not just African Americans, but it's also whites who have been very active in talking about what we need to do. How do we pay? How do we whites who are benefited from it when we were responsible for the ships going to Africa, responsible for the goods that came different places, responsible for the statues that are built, and we have to make sure it happens. We had these discussions, and I revived them, as you know, with the 1921 Tulsa race riot survivors, African American women and men in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who were asking for modern reparations. What happens to us when they destroyed what we called the Black Wall Street? Tulsa, Oklahoma. The whole idea was, can we do it? And most of those, over 90%, well over 90% of the people that I met in 2003 have passed away in the last decade or more. I remember they were just children in 1921 when we had the sense of the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Blacks had businesses, they had barbershops, they had stores, they were very successful. And they said, we don't mind being separate because we can still succeed in what we're going to be able to do. And meeting those people and going down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and talking to them and finding out that they were the children of reparationists, people who moved for reparations in the early 20th century in 1920 and 1921, and that was very important.
Professor Charles Ogletree of Harvard Law School, thank you so much for taking this time to spend with us to discuss this issue.
My pleasure, and I hope that people understand that reparations now, reparations tomorrow, reparations forever. We have to make sure that it happens.
And because of the work of people like yourselves, they will. The beauty of the discussion now is that it permits us to open up an examination of race in the United States. It allows us the opportunity to open up a discussion about the history of the African experience in the United States and, for that matter, in the Western Hemisphere. And indeed, what it provides is an opportunity, should we choose to accept it, to repair the damage that was done to this project known as the United States of America. And in repairing that damage, to actually enter into the body of countries in the civilized world. Those are my thoughts for this episode of The Global African. I'm your host, Bill Fletcher. Thank you.
Me gustaría tener un mundo mucho más inclusivo para todos.
没有贫穷。
Στην ανθρωπότητα θα ήθελα να δω παραπάνω αγάπη, αγνότητα, πολιτισμό και επαφή με τη φύση.
Que el ser humano despierte su conciencia.
I want humanity to see itself as one humanity.
We are the people, a space, a voice. We are teleSUR without borders.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on teleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR. An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on teleSUR.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. teleSUR documentaries. Sundays, only on teleSUR.
On Sunday, the world celebrates the end of World War I, 100 years of it, of the so-called Great War, which started on December 11th on 1918. In Paris, it was stopped after 4 years of war, with victory of France and its allies, and the loss of Germany. That set up the basis for World War II to start. In that same train wagon, after France's occupation, Hitler obliged the French generals to surrender. The chaotic world inherited from 1918 has similar aspects with the present situation of the right wing and the extremism in today's world. What was the geopolitical consequences of this war? Our analysis in Jugada Crítica. On Sunday, the presidents of France and Germany will attend a concert at the Strasbourg Cathedral as a show of good relations between friends and foes, between those who were friends and foes at World War II, to celebrate the first 100 years of the end of World War I. President Macron invited more than 80 presidents from different countries, which were directly or indirectly involved in this war. Trump rejected this invitation. President Macron was hoping for President Trump to reconsider its decision to step back from the IMF treaty. If you ask me, I don't share the fascination of new superpowers for abandonment of freedom and love for nationalism. We can buy a new 21st century based on multilateralism, responsible multilateralism focused on results, strong multilateralism. This needs the participation of the US, who have an important role in the development of a free world. We hope they help us to preserve and reinvent peace. Let's check some of our websites. We go to Emisoras Unidas, which show the first peace treaties that have been done after World War I. The most powerful forces signed 16 peace agreements. The first one put an end to the battles in the East Front, but Russia lost a lot of its territory. Also, we have the Versailles Treaty, signed in 1919 in the Palace of Versailles, which ended the war between Germany and the Allies. The third treaty was signed also in 1919 between the Allies and Austria, and this dissolved the empire that has 7 centuries of age, and it originated half a dozen of states, of new states. Another treaty signed between the Allies and Bulgaria in 1919, in a moment in which war was in favor of Germany, but it transformed the borders of different countries like Yugoslavia. Hungary lost 2/3 of its territory. The Ottoman Empire was dissolved too with this other treaty and stopped the war between Armenians, Greeks and French. Now we go to read the article published in the website marxist.com of Alan Wood. Yeah, talks about the peace created to end more peace. The secret of the negotiations room, the leaders of the civilized world, they bargained as salesmen in a medieval market and divided Europe and the entire world according to their interests. This prepared the basis for conflicts that happened later directly in the Second World War.
Así es como se dividieron Europa y el mundo entero en esferas de intereses. Este hecho
This prepared the base, as we said before, for future conflicts that created World War II. The Versailles Treaty created the League of Nations, an organization that tried to mediate international conflicts and trying to prevent future wars. But their leaders prepared arms races and different conflicts. Lenin considered the League of Nations as a hole of crooks, and then with time Lenin was proved right. Now we go to our correspondent Hansel Oro in Russia. He will update us on the coming commemorations that will take place in Europe because of the first 100 years of the end of World War I. Welcome, Hansel. Hello, Rolando, and our audience. On November 11th, in France, they will celebrate the signing of the armistice of the German Empire. The United States also participated, but later in this First World War. This war was caused by the killing of Archduke Francisco Fernando in 1914. And then Austria declared war to different powers. The alliance was formed by Austria, Germany, and Italy. And then there was Russia, Great Britain, and France on the other side. On June 28 of 1919, 5 years after the killing of the Austrian Archduke, and talking from the political point of view, the Austro-Hungarian Empire caused its dissolution, dissolved also other countries. Russia and Italy dissolved the monarchy of Nicholas II. This happened in the beginning of the 20th century, and I'm talking about now we're talking about the socialist revolution with the Bolshevik party ahead. They became very strong after the awareness of lower classes and worker classes and campesino classes. This came after the First World War, and they continue to consider this after finishing the empire of Nicholas II Tsar. We can say that this world never ended because on the Versailles Treaty, where they blamed Germany for the war, and where Hitler was already present as a character. And it was the beginning of his political career until he became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Well, all of this then created the World War II. These 100 years of the armistice signed in France is important in this current context because the US President Donald Trump is supposed to participate in this, also President Vladimir Putin. Trump has started threats to abandon the INF treaty, which could put the world at risk of nuclear war. Russia has rejected this and asked the US to not to step out of this treaty. Also, the United Kingdom and France have made that call, and they also call for denuclearization around the world. Thank you, Hansel, for this. And it happens that the US President finally rejected the invitation to participate in these celebrations. He won't be present in the celebration for the 100 years of the end of World War I. Now we go to Washington with Alina Duarte. Alina, what have been the first reactions regarding the rejection of Trump after the invitation made by France's President Emmanuel Macron, in a moment in which the world expects dialogue between Trump and Vladimir Putin to try to save the nuclear weapons agreement to be successful? Okay, Rolando, as you said, he won't be present in this Sunday's event. President Donald Trump has been very criticized, not only to now after these decisions. Let's remember that his administration has been a unilateral administration based on unilateralism. As I told you before, he decided to step out from this treaty unilaterally. Months ago, in May, Trump decided to step out of this treaty, despite the opposition of other presidents. The objective of this forum is meant to remember the countries to not to follow the same mistakes that caused World War I. But months ago, President Trump planned a military parade of $1 million military parade, and he was criticized by US citizens and different media outlets. And Trump said that he'd rather not spend so much money in that parade, reason for which he was gonna go to this commemoration of the end of World War I. But then he rejected it. Now it's expected to see what happens in regards to meetings with Vladimir Putin. After the midterm elections, President Trump has been very busy. However, he was not able to win any of the two houses. The House of Representatives is now property of the Democratic Party. And after this, different of the policies of Trump will be defined. Now, the multilateral issue, something in which Trump hasn't been very bright. His speech is based on sanctions, which are actually economic measures taken unilaterally against Iran, against Venezuela. And this meeting in Paris will take place a week after the US reestablishing sanctions unilaterally against Iran, and after the decision of retiring from these peace treaties. Let's see what happens in the next weeks with the Senate and House of Representatives in its majority Democrat. Let's see if this will limit Trump's policies. People have expectation in regards to this. This will affect the decision taking on migration policies and foreign policies. Let's see how will this affect our countries in Latin America in regards to the sanctions against Cuba and the situation in Nicaragua and Venezuela. Let's see how this develops in the next days.
Alina, llama la atención que el presidente estadounidense se retira de este tratado nuclear. Sin embargo, está impulsando conversaciones con Corea del Norte.
He has promoted conversations with North Korea for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. This week, Mark Pompeo was supposed to meet with North Korean representatives. This was also suspended. How do you interpret this double standards of the United States versus nuclear weapons? Well, this is one of the things that we have talked with several analysts here. What they say Donald Trump is pretending is trying to delete everything related to Obama. The great achievements, the nuclear agreement with Iraq lasted more than 1 year and was acknowledged as one of the main achievements of the Obama administration. Donald Trump insisted that it wasn't functional without any proof and said that Iran was violating these agreements, and therefore they had to revise first in a period of 90 days and then 6 months, where sanctions were reimposed. And what calls our attention, as you mentioned, is this policy towards North Korea, which must also be taken very carefully, because let's remember that that zone in Japan, South Korea, the United States has deployed more than 50,000 militaries, more than 50 military bases, and in spite of being in negotiations on several times, it has performed military exercises coordinated with South Korea. In its turn, North Korea has also been willing to dialogue, not only with this encounter last week, in the last weeks in Singapore, but also has freed U.S. prisoners that held in North Korea, finished with one of the nuclear reactors to continue dialoguing in these agreements. And this is something that the media in the United States is not considering, that both nations, United States and North Korea, have kept a dialogue, but this gives you an idea that while they are trying to end what Barack Obama did and try to renegotiate, which is what he said he would do in the case of Iran, he wants one of the great achievements of his administration be the negotiation with North Korea, to be able to show it as great success. It sounds very soon, but actually midterm elections were that 2 years after Donald Trump came to office. But now we are 2 years before the new presidential elections, in which Donald Trump has insisted he would be reelected, and this could be shown as one of the great achievements to negotiate and show population for the next elections. Thank you, Alina. We will go to a pause now, but when we come back, we were asking if the centenary of the end of the First World War is only in the past. What geopolitical conditions still remain to our days? We will be back to analyze this question. We continue reviewing web pages on our critical move of today, and we go to Spanish journal La Vanguardia, which shows a video on how the UK remembers 100 years of the end of the First World War. Since the last Sunday, every night, guards and volunteers manually turn on these torches as part of the celebration for the Armistice Day, the signature of the treaty that ended the First World War 100 years ago next Sunday. Beyond the Shadows is the name that this homage was received. They used to call it the Great War or the War of Wars, but it became a prelude of another, still greater war, the Second World War. The murder of Archduke Ferdinand of Austria and his wife in Sarajevo, June 28, 1914, detoned the war of Austria against Serbia and derived to the First World War. The Austro-Hungarian Empire compelled to investigate this murder to Serbian peers, but they did not accept all conditions. On July 28, 1914, Austro-Hungary declared the war to Serbia, and in July, Russia participated. The so-called World War I was not such, although it was held between 1914 and 1918 and mobilized more than 60 million European soldiers and involved 32 countries. France, Russia, Great Britain until 1917, and from there on, other countries were added. And confronted to the coalitions called Central Powers, composed by Bulgaria, Austro-Hungary, and Germany. Since 1914, the countries increased the military budgets in an arms race, and this period was known as the Armed Peace. It officially ended on June 28, 1919, with the signature of the Versailles Treaty, whereby Germany accepted all responsibility for the war. The German Empire was fragmented in two by the Polish Hall. It was demilitarized, its colonies were seized and compelled to pay huge compensations. The next large-scale conflict was the Second World War. To analyze our critical move today, we will go to Spain to talk with philosopher and jurist Mayol Zanauja. Welcome to teleSUR, Professor. Researchers and analysts say that wars are not only measured between winners and losers, but also by the world they are reconfiguring. In the case of the First World War, what world did they leave us? Good afternoon from Barcelona, Catalunya. As I understand it, as you say it very well, the so-called Great War later was just a prelude of the second one. There would be, in my opinion, 5 consequences that were peace treaties that supposed territorial changes, military sanctions to the losers, a political consequence, disappearance of huge monarchic dynasties, an economic consequence like inflation and impoverishment, and the United States becoming the First World War. A 4th consequence is a demographic nature, where a large number of military and civilian dead. And the 5th would be social consequences, tensions, impoverishment, and advance of extremism, which would be the egg of the serpent of what later would be totalitarianisms. One of the aspects you mentioned of these 5 consequences, the loss of human lives. More than 60 million soldiers died under weapons. But why did youth attend that war?
básicamente hay también, ¿no? En la juventud hay aquellos jóvenes que no han vivido una guerra.
There's the youth that has not lived a war always have that call, and that First World War seemed wouldn't have any death toll. It would be a way to grow, as many youngsters thought so. And as you reminded in the beginning of this introduction, in some battle, many youngsters died, and this is why there was a decrease of natality in the coming years. So, of course, there were huge military and civilian death toll and terrible demographic consequences. Some aspects that unleashed this war were then became worse territorial tensions and even problems that became worse after the First World War. How did the reconfiguration of the European map settle? We would have to analyze that there were two bands. The Triple Alliance that you mentioned by the European, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy that had been, it not only, and then Austria against that was the aggressor nation that unleashed the conflict. And I say this because later, with the years, the disaster of the Second World War was also generated from the past, and also France, UK, and the Russian Empire also suffered changes, and many nations supported one or other side. Italy and Japan also united the Triple Entente, and in definitive, more than 70 million militaries, of which 60 million were Europeans, mobilized and fought in the then largest war of history. To answer your question, I would have to say that we saw the Second World War as the reconfiguration of old alliances, and then the Allies, UK, France, Holland, and the United States, and the so-called axis of evil, Germany, Italy, and Japan. And on the other hand, Russia, that was trying to recover lost territory, to implement their power as well. I would like to incorporate Vasco intellectual Iñaki Vicente. Welcome to teleSUR. Iñaki, one of the consequences we have been analyzing of the First World War was the rise of nationalisms, something that had been seen since before the First World War, but that after ending the war, this was accentuated and even reached our day. Well, one of the rises of nationalism was propitiated by the development or the transit from the colonialist phase of capitalistic economy to the imperialistic phase. The analysis made from the left of what the new phase of the world capitalistic economy of authors like Hobson, Rosa Luxemburg, Lenin, Bukharin, and others, each insisted that the imperialism was accentuating nationalisms and oppressions of the people. So small or large states that attended at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century were, even if they were large states, they were overwhelmed by many circumstances. They were the European states like the French and German states, and Italy, in another measure, Spain and Portugal, the states that had to overcome more pressure because the great decisive powers as Great Britain and the United States that was increasing had, and the United States had the entire South America and was expanding through Asia. England had Africa and Asia to control trade. And in these countries, Germany and Italy, contradictions and conflicts because of the expansion of the imperialist financial economy made the decade of 1910 and early 20s conflicts arise. There was a beginning of war between France and Germany, on Morocco specifically, but these nationalism ended in all of them in the First World War because of economic factors. Nevertheless, and I conclude with this, in the First World War, a new reason for bourgeois nationalism arose, which was the Soviet Union as of October 1917. In view of the danger of the Soviet Union and the international working movement, the bourgeois nationalism started evolving to fascism and very aggressive nationalism. It was not only a defenses nationalism, 1910, 1908, or the Dreyfus case in France, in view of the fear of the working movement that could take force with the example of the Soviet Union since 1917, the European bourgeoisies, both in Great Britain and the United States and as well, promoted a bourgeois nationalism that ended in the Second World War. So, in the midst of this circumstance, Nazi fascism was consolidated. But how does this arrive to our days, for example, in Poland, a country that was also reborn as a state after the First World War? Groups linked to Nazis and appeared there.
La verdad es que no he podido escuchar muy bien lo que ha comentado, pero me imagino por dónde va.
I didn't listen very well to what you said, but I imagine what the question was. At this time, the European eastern part, like Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, etc., is having the rebirth of a fascist nationalism, not only provoked by imperialism, but also it is provoked by imperialism with millionaire investments. For example, in Macedonia, NATO's interest in expanding Macedonia and including Macedonia in NATO, but also a former policy we must analyze, what was the responsibility of the fall of the Soviet Union towards an international policy, essentially since 1930s, a little before the Second World War. The invasion of the Soviet Union to Finland, for example, the Soviet invasion and distribution with the Nazi of Poland, and then the extermination of the Katyn buses, and the defensive policy of the Warsaw Pact, and the repressive and control policy of the Soviet Union. For example, in the Prague Spring, the conflict in Poland twice, when Budapest, for example, or Berlin, there was a Soviet-Polish legitimacy, and when the USSR fell, one of the reasons was precisely that the problem of national rights of the countries that were inside the Warsaw Pact have not been clarified, and in this case, the capitalistic system manipulated these problems that were still pending, and since the Soviet Union had not developed the first working class model, it became acute. So when the Soviet Union fell, many of these republics started to turn to right-wing nationalism by most of the committees of the communist parties that embrace the worst capitalism, the neoliberal capitalism. The Yeltsin case, for example. Yeltsin had been mayor of Moscow, and the Soviet Communist Party became, in a very short time, in the pet of Ronald Reagan, allowing them, North American capitals, to destroy the Russian economy and defending a Russian nationalism that Lenin had criticized harshly. I think we must be responsible and assume the mistakes that were committed in order to keep them to be reproduced in other attempts of socialism. And we could also name other recent cases, but we don't have time. Thank you, Professor Iñaki, for your reflections, and Mayol for being with us from Spain. It is a time for another pause, but what political lessons did World War I leave us? What world was configured for the rest of the century that still remains until the first decades of the 21st century? We'll be back. The German troops received the order of withdrawing from occupied territories in a term of 15 days, but between the signature and the effectiveness of the ceasefire of the First World War, 2,500 soldiers are killed and increased to 16.5 million people, which was used to kill and dismember both soldiers and civilians. On the July 28, 1914, people entered on horses, but 4 years later they used tanks, submarines, and aircraft. This was the first industrialized war in history with the appearance of other weapons. Rifles used in war could shoot even 20. Germans tested a new weapon, chlorum, and 25,000 French soldiers were killed. Phosgene was also used in 1917. The terrible mustard gas was used. The post-war brought serious critique to the capitalistic system, and many people started claiming their independence. And in this segment, we have politologist Martín Porgar, master degree in philosophy of war. Welcome to teleSUR. After this analysis we have performed, according to your opinion, what are the main lessons that the First War left? Well, the First World War, in my understanding, was not a single war. It was a century of deep wars that started with this terrible industrialized war where even the mass manipulation means were perfected to seek legitimacy and for the peoples to go to the war until not only chemical weapons but war tanks and other weapons. This was a different view, but also reconfigured the European territorial map, and even the old empires, the Ottoman, the Austro-Hungarian, and the winning powers divided the territory that still are hauling problems in the Middle East. Even the so-called humanitarian